When you met with General An later on, the North Vietnamese commander, what were the main insights you got from his thinking about strategy and tactics he employed and his assessment of the battle?
Well, go ahead. You want? General An was, very clear that he thought they learned better lessons and more lessons from that battle than we did. The Vietnamese were obviously very serious about learning those lessons because we talked also with General Hoang Phong, a two-star who was chief of history of the Vietnamese army at the time we first went to Hanoi. And as a lieutenant colonel, he had been put on the Ho Chi Minh Trail for a 2.5-month walk down to arrive in the Ia Drang Valley at the time the battle was going on. His task was to write the after-action review. And he did so, a 69, 70-page pamphlet titled How to Fight the Americans, which they published and circulated among all their troops and among the Viet Cong in the South as well. And they thought that whatever losses they took, and they may have been as high as 5,000 killed in that 30-day campaign, that it was well worth what they learned. Primarily, what they learned was relevant to the highlands. There are only a few clearings in the highlands that are sufficient to handle large air-mobile helicopter landings. So stake them out. Put some scouts on every one of them with a radio or with some sort of communication system so they can pass the word the Americans look like they're going to land here. And An, of course, went on to, by 1967, command a division in the Highlands, and he was quite proud to say that Hill 875 Dak To was my ambush of the Americans. And we expressed a little surprise, said, how so? He said, I took my regimental commanders on top of that hill, and we looked, and I told them, I want you to prepare deep and very strong defenses right here. And they said, whatever for, sir? And I said, for the Americans. And they said, sir, there are no Americans. He said, you provide the defenses, I'll provide the Americans. Well, the 173rd Airborne and elements of the 4th Division got really tore up on that mountain. And An said that his ability to attract Americans was one of the lessons he learned out of the Ia Drang, and that was pretty much it.
Okay. I'd like to add one more thing.
Sure, General.
On General An. General An and I became good friends. Joe Galloway and I have been back to Vietnam 6 or 8 times. We've been to Hanoi 3 or 4 times. We've talked to General Jop. We became friends with General An, talked with him for hours. General An, from the age 14 years old, all he did was fight wars. He fought the Chinese, he fought the Cambodians, he fought the French, he fought the Americans, he fought the South Vietnamese. All that guy did was fight wars. He died of a heart attack a few years ago, and Joe Galloway and I, on a trip back to Hanoi, visited his widow and offered our condolences in his home. And she sat me down at his desk. And that was a pretty peculiar feeling, to sit at the desk of a guy who was trying to kill me in 1965. But General An was a damn good man, and I hope to see him again.
In our interview with General An, the North Vietnamese commander, he had some remarkable things to say about the fight at LZ Albany, which we underline and underscore in the new book. He talked about the fact that the North Vietnamese policing the battlefield that night of the 17th executed our wounded. And he said, I want to assure you that we gave no such orders. We understood the value of prisoners, and where possible, we wanted to take prisoners. But he said the battlefield at Albany was such, and the fighting so fierce and hand to hand, that when we went into the battlefield to recover our wounded and our dead, they were intermingled neck and neck with your wounded and dead. And it is not possible on a battlefield like that to walk through tending to your wounded and ignoring wounded and armed soldiers who are your enemy. You pass them by, they'll shoot you. So he said it happened, which we regret, but it happened not just on our side. And I take him more or less at his word on that. There is in the new book also shedding new light on what happened at Albany and on the singular heroism of a man, Sergeant John Eade, who, with 3 of his comrades from Larry's Alpha Company, one of the platoons that was overrun, not only endured on that battlefield among the enemy, as one by one his 3 companions fell, until there was only him. He had been shot, he'd been hit with shrapnel, he was hit in the foot, unable to move, continued to fight, continued to kill the enemy, and eventually a North Vietnamese officer got the drop on him and thought he executed him, shot him in the face with a pistol. It took out Eade's eye, but he woke up and he was alive. And he heard someone coming through the brush, and he thought, well, this is it, but I'm going to take them, as many of them as I can, and he prepared his last grenade to take them with him. And Americans came through. And he said, give me some water. And the guy looked at him and said, well, you're shot in the stomach. I can't give you any water. He said, well, damn, it hurts. Give me some morphine. He said, no, you've got a head wound. We can't give you any morphine. And he said, well, what the hell can you give me? And the guy said, want a cigarette? Eade said, I didn't smoke, but I took the damn cigarette. That's all there was. A truly remarkable man, and he sort of lived his life apart from us until Larry found him, or he found Larry somehow, and he now comes to our reunions. And like I say, I take my hat off when I see that guy coming, because his story, which is in the new book, it just takes your breath away. What one man can do by himself on a battlefield can just really leave you breathless.